Hi friends, let's delve into which cooking oil is the healthiest. We'll compare a variety of fats and oils from olive oil to butter to help you choose the best fats for your health. Are fats even good for you? What happens to your body when you eat a lot of fat and what happens to your body when you eat a low-fat diet? In order to understand how to choose the best oil or fat, you need to understand what they are made out of, how those ingredients affect your body, how they are created, and what their smoke point is to help you determine how to cook. Usually an oil or fat has multiple different types of fats, including molecules called fatty acids. All oils and fats are processed from a plant or animal. Plant oils can be chemically or mechanically processed. You may have heard the term virgin or extra virgin olive oil. This means that olive oil should be only mechanically processed and no chemical or heat was used to extract the oils. Extra virgin should be more fruity and less acidic as it's supposed to be from fresh olives. Olive oil is apparently a dirty business and there are a lot of counterfeit olive oils mixing other less expensive plant oils to save money. There is no standard quality guarantee, but from what I researched, it seems that there are 6 steps to hopefully get you a pure olive oil. Number 1, stick to extra virgin label. Number 2, check your harvest date. Best Buy and bottled on dates are not reliable. Number 3, check for a single producer or estate and be suspicious of multiple places of origin. Number 4, check to see if you have a free fatty acid level or FFA and it should be less than 0.8. Number 5, check to see if they have a third-party seal such as European Union's Protected Designation of Origin, PDO, Italy's DOP, or COOC, Certified Extra Virgin from California. Now, if the country of origin is Australia or Chile, then those both are legit. Now, let's define the terms oil and fat, which both have multiple different fats, with fatty acid being the most common. Fatty acids have attached to them at one end a carbon, 2 oxygens, and a hydrogen. This group is also collectively known as a carboxylic acid group of atoms, hence the name fatty acid, but it's not corrosive like a typical acid, but it can lower your blood pH. Now, I'm sorry for the technical terms. That's just how chemists name chemicals, and it's all based on the periodic table of elements. If you or your children would like an introduction to the periodic table of elements, I actually wrote a children's ebook about 10 years ago called The Silly Adventures of Pro and Newt, and you can find it on Apple iBooks. So if you eat a lot of fatty acids, you are eating an acid, even though it doesn't taste sour. And there are different types of fats in your food: sterols, fatty acids, triglycerides, phospholipids, and trans fats. The last one is really bad for your health, and I'll explain why a little later. Within these fats, there are lots of different players, and they don't all behave the same in your body. And when you eat animal and plant products, you may be eating all of these fats. For example, one sterol is called cholesterol, which is found only in animals like steak and eggs. It is super important for the structure of the bag that holds your cells together, called the cell membrane. And cholesterol is super important for you to make other hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, and aldosterone. So the body can make cholesterol on its own because it doesn't want to leave it to chance waiting for you to eat, because you may not eat. So your body can make all the fats you eat except for 2 fatty acids, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. It also can't make or break trans fats, which is not essential and absolutely bad. This is why Twinkies used to last so long, because bacteria can't even break it down. Therefore, trans fats will accumulate in your body and they are super toxic. So omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids are also known as polyunsaturated fatty acids, and they are essential to get from your diet. They're only found in certain foods. Omega-3 rich foods are like fatty fish, maybe anchovies and salmon, but you can also get them, although to a lesser degree, in plants like flaxseed and walnuts. And if you are deficient in omega-3, you will have skin irritation, hair thinning, dry eyes, joint pains. You'll struggle with mental health. Studies also suggest omega-3 fats may help prevent certain cancers, preserve your vision, and avoid autoimmune conditions and dementia. Unfortunately, Americans don't work at eating omega-3 fats, and therefore our omega-3 savings account is in the toilet. And you can eat omega-3 fats directly, or the body can convert alpha-linolenic acid from the plants to EPA and DHA, the active forms of omega-3 that is good for your body. There isn't really a standard on how much we should eat, but like everything else in life, Too much can be toxic, as omega-3 fats can cause you to bleed. I don't know anybody who cooks with fish oil, but they are commonly taken as supplements. Cod liver oil supplements are commonly given by moms in Europe to prevent colds, stiff joints, rheumatism, rickets, a disease of vitamin D deficiency, and to treat skin conditions. This is because cod liver oil also has vitamin A and vitamin D besides two special omega-3 fatty acids called EPA and DHA. I actually tried rubbing fish oil on my toddler to help his horrible eczema. It worked, but he really stunk, and the stench messed up a whole load of laundry, which I had to throw away. Now, if you do take fish oil, make sure you get a reliable, heavy metal-free fish oil. And if you are vegan, algae oils are great, since that is really how the fish get their omega-3s. So the best cooking oil would be one with a high smoke point and high omega-3 fat content, since Americans struggle to get omega-3 fats in their diet. And it appears that mustard seed oil hits both of these marks. However, mustard seed oil has erucic acid known to cause nutritional deficiencies and is a heart toxin in animals. The FDA prohibits to use mustard seed oil as a cooking oil, and I was really surprised to find it on store shelves. I would never cook with mustard seed oil, nor would I ever eat it. But mustard seed powder is a great addition to cruciferous vegetables to help release the beneficial nutrients of those vegetables called sulforaphanes. Now, you may have heard that canola oil naturally has erucic acid. However, the industry now only uses low erucic acid seeds, so it typically has less than 2% of erucic acid in its total fatty acid content. If we just compare smoke point and omega-3 levels, canola oil appears to be healthier than olive oil. For salads, flaxseed and walnut oils seem to be a great source of omega-3 fatty acids. I wouldn't cook with them because they have a low smoke point. Do not reuse your oil. Don't heat things up and then pour it in a jar to save it. This study also showed that at 90 days, your oil would lose half of its omega-3 content. Now, I want to elaborate on the importance of knowing the smoke point of your cooking oils. All oils have a smoke point in which they will burn. Toxic gases form from burning anything. So the higher the heat, the more toxic chemicals are made from oxidation, and they may form compounds like acrylamide, which are classified as a probable human carcinogen. Don't forget to always turn the exhaust on so that you don't inhale those toxic fumes. Theoretically, you can also change the shape of the oil that is left in your pan and convert some of them into trans fats, which the body cannot get rid of. And for sure, trans fats causes heart disease and inflammation in your blood vessels. Trans fats is what allows shelf stability for processed foods. And that also gives you that creamy taste in the mouth. And that's why industry sold as products for trans fats for decades. Now, the FDA has banned trans fats, but you can still find them in the store. You have to read the labels. Now, how you cook your food can turn something healthy to something toxic. Grilling and broiling are the highest heat methods, and they can reach as high at 500 degrees Fahrenheit, which are the worst forms of cooking. Now, baking can reach pretty high temperatures too, but you can always bake at lower temperatures, and you can always put a bowl of water in the oven to moisten the air. Stir frying on your stove can reach about 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Gas stoves are worse than electric stoves because that gas is toxic. I no longer use my gas stove because of this, and we bought some cheap electric camping stoves to cook on now. Deep frying is also bad, and the temperature it reaches depends on your oil's smoking point. Just know when you see smoke, that is toxic gas, which can cause you harm, especially in the lungs, even if you never eat any of that food. Cooking with wet methods is always best. Pressure cooking can get to a temperature of 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Boiling is around 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius, and that really depends on how high you are on Earth. Steaming is at max, the boiling temperature. Microwaving is water-based and cooks unevenly. There are apparently a lot of people who misunderstand how a microwave works. Microwave uses short radio waves, similar to how your TV station can broadcast the news. There are energy waves all over you right now in the air. These are all forms of energy based on the electromagnetic spectrum. As a wave gets shorter, it has more energy. So visible light is more powerful than microwaves, and UV light is even more powerful than visible light. and hence you can get a sunburn when you go out in the sun. You can also buy UV light boxes that can disinfect your phone, and they also use UV light to disinfect foods like flours to kill germs. By the way, don't eat raw flour like dough. They are commonly contaminated with germs. However, the microwave length is so wide, so the energy isn't spread out evenly. And it is also not a good way to disinfect your food. But it is perfectly safe to reheat things and to cook some simple things. Microwaving is safer than high heat and even stir frying that turns your food into toxic chemicals. Here is a chart of the smoke points of common cooking oils. As you can see from this list, the safest oil when it comes to temperature to grill or broil is the avocado oil. However, remember, cooking on high dry heat also creates a lot of toxins in the air as well as in your food, and these toxins cause you to age and can cause cancer. From the list of cooking methods, only pressure cooking, boiling, steaming, and microwaving keeps below the smoke points of all the major cooking oils. Now, stir frying can also reach pretty high temperatures, and this is why I prefer avocado oil when I stir fry. Now, for some reason, soybean oil is labeled as vegetable oil. Then you have oil blends. If you have an oil blend, the smoke point will be determined by the oil with the lowest smoke point. Now, the reason why I group these oils together is because these oils are predominantly unsaturated fatty acids. This means they have a bend in their hydrocarbon tail caused by a double bond. So when you put these molecules next to each other, they don't stack up so neatly. They're kind of loosely stacked, and therefore they remain a liquid at room temperature. Now, if you use solid fatty acids to cook, you're probably cooking with some kind of animal fat like butter, ghee, tallow, duck fat, or you can be using coconut oil or a vegetable shortening, which are hydrogenated vegetable oils or chemically created oils. Here are the smoke points of common saturated fatty acids at room temperature, considered to be 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. It's more important to know the smoke point so that you know what temperature to cook with, and you should always cook below the smoke point to minimize creating toxic byproducts. Now let's talk about another essential fatty acid, omega-6 fatty acids, which is another polyunsaturated fat. Now, people who eat enough polyunsaturated fats have lower LDL cholesterol, and they lower the risk of stroke and heart disease. There are several omega-6 fatty acids, which include Linolenic acid and Arachidonic acid. Your body can make arachidonic acid, but it can't make linoleic acid, and hence you need to eat them, and they are from plants. The good news is just about everyone in America is an overachiever on omega-6 fatty acids, as they are found abundantly in processed foods and plant oils. The bad news is, just like most things in life, too much of something good, even if it's essential, can be toxic. It's like vitamin A. You need it for health, but if you get too much vitamin A, you can get vitamin A toxicity. Usually that's from abusing supplements. And those with liver disease are most susceptible. And here's a chart of the tolerable upper intakes of preformed vitamin A from the NIH website. The other problem with omega-6 is that it competes with omega-3. Now, the goal is not to have too much omega-6 so that the omega-3 isn't crowded out. Linoleic acid competes with alpha-linolenic acid to prevent your body from converting it to the active forms of omega-3, which are EPA and DHA. You can actually measure how much omega-6 and omega-3s you have by looking at the cell membrane of your red blood cells. Now, there is some controversy on the internet, as some people think too much omega-6 linoleic acid will increase inflammation by increasing arachidonic acid. Have you ever taken ibuprofen? Arachidonic acid and its metabolites is what ibuprofen works against to decrease inflammation when you have pain. Pain is your immune system in action trying to heal you, and when the root cause of your inflammation stops, the pain usually resolves too. If you broke your bone, ibuprofen doesn't address the root cause, but it tries to block the body from mounting the healing response or inflammation. And hence, it can actually delay healing, but nevertheless, it can temporarily help reduce the pain. And this is why it is not recommended to use NSAIDs if you have a fracture. Do you see how someone can misinterpret science when you have only one viewpoint and you're only looking at one side of the biochemistry and not applying this to real life? And that's actually the advantage as medical doctors. who actually treat severe illnesses. Their theory is partially right. Americans are consuming too much linoleic acid, but linoleic acid does not increase arachidonic acid levels in your body. And this has been verified by multiple studies. If someone has a problem with the basic science of these publications that are peer-reviewed, then please ask them to email the scientists who published the numerous papers. And they can easily find their contact information printed at the end of the publications. If you are a meat eater, then the majority of your body's arachidonic acid is actually obtained from your meat. In this chart, you can see that pork has the most arachidonic acid. All birds have arachidonic acid, especially duck and turkey. Did you know that there's a higher rate of heart attacks after Thanksgiving and Christmas? Some of it is speculated to be from alcohol causing atrial fibrillation. Some may be stress, but who isn't stressed the rest of the year? How much of it could be from the foods you're eating to increase your inflammation? And we do know people binge eat around Christmas time, especially on those hams. They simply just eat a lot of meat. So if you're worried about elevated arachidonic acid, you should look for ways to reduce stress and reduce animal products, especially poultry, which are concentrated in arachidonic acid. Duck is the worst of all. Eating oils high in oleic acid, though, are found to lower arachidonic acid levels. And you can get oleic acid from extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil, amongst other plant oils. Did you know oleic acid also inhibits cholesterol synthesis and improves insulin sensitivity? This is another reason why you can reduce your cholesterol and improve your blood sugars by switching to the right oils to improve cardiovascular health. The average American eats about 10 tablespoons of a vegetable oil in any given day. That accounts for less than 26 milligrams of omega-6 fatty acids, whereas a serving of chicken has hundreds of grams of arachidonic acid. I also think people forgot that every animal cell has fat because every cell has a cell membrane that is made out of fat. And even the leanest chicken breast is 18% fat. Americans eat 1 million chickens an hour. Can you imagine the amount of infectious diseases in those factory chicken coops? This is why flu begins with chickens. Superbugs are growing left and right. And when they detect one influenza strain, they have to call all the other chicken cage mates. Let's talk about how the body uses fat as energy. Most of us know our bodies love sugar, and sugar is a great energy source, and that's why it's always in energy drinks. But the body has a backup plan for times when you don't have access to sugar. Let's say when you're sleeping or during famine. And this is because sugar is essential to living. You would die if your body can't have glucose in your blood 24/7. But your body can't store much sugar, maybe 2 to 3 days, in the form of glycogen in your liver and muscle tissues. And this is why when you exercise vigorously or go on a prolonged fast, you will break down muscle to access glycogen. And when you don't eat carbohydrates to restock that sugar, you will lose a lot of weight, but it is mostly water weight because glycogen is stored with water, 3 times more water in your muscle tissue. So when you see rapid weight loss, when you don't eat carbohydrates, you are mostly losing muscle in the form of water. This is the first 4 pounds of weight loss when you fast or go on a low carbohydrate diet. This is actually a big problem for athletes because they use up their sugar stores so quickly. And if they don't eat enough carbs to match their exercise, then they can't refuel their muscle. This is also a problem for people who don't eat or choose not to eat carbohydrates. Now, why do you want to lose weight? Are you trying to look thinner, achieve some kind of weight on a scale, or are you trying to be healthy? They don't always get you healthy. If your goal is to get healthy, then you need to lose body fat inside your belly and not muscle tissue. Now, if you restrict both by fasting, you will first lose muscle, and then after a few days, you'll start burning your body fat. These are the prolonged fasting people, and sure, you can lose weight at the cost of losing some muscle. This is why I don't fast and why I don't recommend prolonged fasting, because the weight you're losing is in the wrong tissue. Everyone over 40 is already losing muscle every year, and the rate gets faster as we grow older. It is one metabolic organ that you can change through exercise and nutrition, and it buffers all your other organs from damage of energy toxicity, by both sugar and fats. Muscle can store both energy molecules if you have enough muscle. If you don't have muscle, you can't handle as much sugar and fats in excess. This is why I think Ozempic and Wegovy can be dangerous in the long term. And believe me, the people who are hospitalized oftentimes are fasting for days since they cannot eat for medical reasons. And these people rapidly lose muscle and the strength to stand within 24 hours of being in bed. Now, if you restrict carbohydrates and only eat more fat, like a ketogenic diet, you will still lose muscle as you are using up glycogen in your muscle, and you will also slow down the loss of your own body fat since you're eating fat for energy. Remember, when you lose glycogen, you lose water, which is heavier than fat, and therefore you're going to get smaller on the scale. If you restrict fat in your diet and just eat carbohydrates, you actually preserve muscle and you break down more of your own body's fat. Break it down 80 times faster than a high-fat diet. And this has been shown in metabolic ward studies. So fat weighs less than water, therefore your scale won't lose as much weight as compared to a low-carb diet, because during a low-carb diet, you're losing water. So the scale can be very misleading. And this is why I don't recommend that people use the scale when they're trying to lose weight. Instead, it's much better to measure your waistline to gauge your progress. Now, when you eat a low-fat diet and you eat actually excess highly refined processed carbs, you're unlikely to lose weight since all the excess carbs actually turn into fat. Now, if you eat a high-fat ketogenic diet, 80% fat, despite the fat having more calories, most people will simply eat less food. So overall, their total calories are less. And if you eat a high-protein diet, you're going to also eat less calories than the refined carbohydrate low-fat diet. Do you see how just by taking out the refined carbohydrates, you will lose weight no matter what diet you pick? So when you do eat fats, are you eating any saturated fats? Fatty acids can be saturated or unsaturated fats, and this is again chemistry. When you have the maximum amount of hydrogen on the hydrocarbon tail, then that tail is straighter, they stack straighter together, they're solid at room temperature, and they are saturated with hydrogens. Your body can make its own saturated fats. You do not need to eat any saturated fats. That's why you can get a fatty liver from overeating refined carbohydrates and proteins. And yes, certain saturated fats will increase your LDL cholesterol, and so will eating excess sugar and protein. Now, all animals and plants have saturated fats, but they have different types and different concentrations. Here's a list of cooking fats that are high in saturated fat. And as you can see, they're mostly animal-based, but there is also coconut oil, palm kernel oil, and coconut creams. They are also high in saturated fat. They are different than animal saturated fat. What's missing is common cooking oils. They too have some saturated fat, but way less. So if your diet is primarily animal-based, you have a high saturated fat diet. Saturated fats can have even and odd number of carbons. The even-chain saturated fats appear to be worse for our health. Fat cells are metabolically active organs that secrete hormones to communicate with the rest of the body. So if you're eating a lot of red meat, one fat you're eating is palmitic acid. It is an even-chain saturated fat. It is known to promote insulin resistance. It causes lipotoxicity. So here's how it works. Palmitic acid actually has toxic metabolites. These metabolites are known as acylcarnitine, ceramides, and diacylglycerols. They're actually mitochondrial toxins. And if you're into longevity, you're probably trying to increase your mitochondria. Hence, if you're on a high saturated fat diet, you may have improved weight loss, improved your hemoglobin A1C, and improved your fatty liver. All signs of sugar toxicity, but have you traded it for fat toxic diseases that starts with lower mitochondria? So I personally don't think a low carb and high animal protein diet is a diet of longevity. When you eat a high saturated fat diet, it actually will increase your LDL cholesterol. And some people think that it's not increasing your bad LDL cholesterol. And if you want to know why, check out the next video.